Yeah. I don't know how to describe it to you where it is. Well, I have a Namishnias. We're in the middle of the subject of Rabbi Akiva's opinion. We are.
I will look like Rabbi Akiva.
We said, okay, we're looking at Rabbi Akiva. It's like 3 lines after that. We asked, why don't we just say that let me go back. The Mishnah says that if someone shechs and there's no blood, so he can eat it with his hands not being washed, because it won't impart any tumah, because it never got wet. There's no blood, so it never got wet. The problem is that implies that if his hands are wet, if there was blood, then he can't eat it. He cannot eat it without washing his hands. And the problem is that hands are only a sheni. It's called shniyas. Hands are shniyas. It's a tumah midrabanan. It's one of the yudches davar that Bais and Bais Hillel decreed upon in Masechta Shabbos. So the food, regular food, cannot become a shlishi. If your hands are a sheni, that would make the food a shlishi. There's no such thing. So we said, okay, we must be talking about kachim. We said, well, you have a big problem if you think the Mishnah is kachim, because the Mishnah has the word kaya in there, and there's no such thing. And then even if it is kachim, then the blood of kachim isn't machshir anyway. And besides, kachim doesn't even need blood to be machshir. Kachim is always machshir chibas hakedesh machshartan. It's always susceptible to tumah. So we had a big problem with that. So what we can't be chulin, can't be kachim. So we were looking for this thing in the middle. So we said maybe it's meiser. So we said, okay, meiser, that would fit with one opinion, the chachamim, not with Reb Meir. The only problem is, even with the chachamim it won't fit, because maybe the chachamim only hold that meiser you're not allowed to eat, but it doesn't mean you're not allowed to touch. And our Mishnah is talking about touching. Why? Because the Gemara understands the Mishnah to mean that you can't even feed it to someone else if it would have gotten wet with the blood. So then we said, okay, well, maybe we're not talking about the regular gzeira on the hands, that they're secondary tumah. Maybe we're talking about a special case where the hands are a rishon l'tumah. Tchilos, they're rishon. How do hands become a rishon? Well, you put them into the house of tzaras. So, and then we explained that there's a machlekes Rabbi Akiva. No. First we said that Reb Shimon ben Elazar says in the name of Reb Meir that hands that enter into house of tzaras are considered a rishon, even for chulin. And we prove it. We don't prove the chulin part, but we prove that the hands become a rishon part, because we have a machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim, where Rabbi Akiva says that hands that enter into a house is considered a rishon. So we said, so why don't we just say it's Rabbi Akiva? So we said, well, Rabbi Akiva only tells me that it becomes a rishon. He doesn't tell me that it's a rishon for chulin. Reb Shimon ben Elazar is the one that says that it's a rishon for chulin. So we say, well, maybe our Mishnah is Reb Shimon ben Elazar, that says that we're dealing with this very unique case. Someone put his hands inside a house of tzaras, Bais hamenuga. The hands become a rishon, according to Rabbi Akiva. And Reb Shimon ben Elazar would add on that the hands are rishon even for chulin, and we're dealing with the chulin animal here. The hands are a rishon, chulin can become a sheni. That's what we've just gained. Chulin. Now the Gemara asks, let it even be that the hands are shniyas. The Hashaminam leil Rabbi Akiva, because we've heard from Rabbi Akiva, the Amar Sheni oisa shlishi b'chulin, that a sheni could make a shlishi by chulin. It was taught in the Mishnah. Boi bayayim, on that day, which day is that? Boi bayayim, the day of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The day that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was instated.
I think that's the only place it's used. The word
Boi bayayim. Rashi over here says whenever it says Boi bayayim, it always means that day that the Gemara Brachas talks about. what happened was in the yeshiva, Rabbi Gamliel was the head of the yeshiva, but Rabbi Gamliel insulted Rabbi Yeshua 3 times on different occasions. So they said this is not right. Rabbi Yeshua is the elder, so they got rid of Rabbi Gamliel, and they didn't know who to put in. So they thought maybe we'll put in Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva doesn't have the lineage. His father was a convert. We'll put in Rabbi Yeshua. You can't put Rabbi Yeshua. He was the one that was the contestant. That doesn't look right. So they said we'll take Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He has yichus. He's a 10th generation from Ezra, and that's when it says that he was 18 years old and his beard turned white. So on that day, everything changed. The Bais Medrash was opened. Everyone came in. And there were added rows, and every question was answered. It was like a big day. So on that day, Rabbi Akiva said, "Darash Rabbi Akiva v'chol klei cheres yitame." Any earthenware vessel Tame loy nemar eli yitame l'tame acherim limit al kikar sheni shuoser shlisha b'chulin. What's going on over here is like this. If you have an oven that's made out of earthenware, it's funny, Rashi has a girsa here that has a little bit more to the story than what we have. Now, anything that enters into the airspace of an earthenware vessel or an earthenware oven contaminates everything that's in it. So, let's say a sheretz goes into the airspace, all of the airspace becomes a rishon, and including the oven becomes a rishon. And then anything that's in the oven would become a sheni.
So it's like the house. Like the house?
In a house,
The hands.
a house would only be by a tummy mace. By a
Yes,
dead.
we're talking about if you put something into the airspace in the house.
No, that would be. Oh! You're talking about like if you put the hands in the house become a rishon. The hands in the house become a rishon, right? That's what we were saying. So here, but here we're saying that the breads that are inside it become a sheni. But the problem is that the pasuk says when the breads become tamei, that are in the oven, it becomes a sheni. It doesn't just say that they're tamei. It says yitame, and we're understanding from yitame that they can also impart tumah, a third level of tumah. So that means that it could give over tumah to chulin. The Gemara says that this is possible, but dilma hani mili b'tumah deraisa aval b'derabanan loy. We don't know that Rabbi Akiva says this about Tumah D'Rabbanan. That was a case of a sheretz. Our Mishnah is talking about hands that are tameh. Our Mishnah clearly says that if there's no blood, ne'achalan biyadayim esayavos, you can eat it with hands that weren't washed. Hands that weren't washed is only a Tumah D'Rabbanan. We never learned that a Tumah D'Rabbanan can go from a chulin, from a sheni to a shlishi. That we don't know. We've heard that it works by a tumah deraisa, by a sheretz, creeping creature in an oven, that the breads become a sheni, because the oven is a rishon, the breads are a sheni, and those breads can go to a shlishi. That has an origin of deraisa, but by a derabanan maybe we don't say that. Okay, we're holding now Amar Rabbi Elazar, yes, Amar Rabbi Ishia. I need strength to go through this Gemara. This is an interesting piece. Okay. Hacha bechulin shenasu al taras hakodesh askinan. But like Rabbi Yeshua, we're dealing here. You see, we can't be dealing with chulin. We can't be dealing with kachim. So we need a middle case, right? So Rabbi Elazar says in the name of Rabbi Ishia, here we're dealing with chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh. What that means is that there is someone that's keeping everything pure, even his chulin, because this is a person that sometimes eats sacrifices, sometimes he eats karbanas, and he has to keep everything on the same level, even his chulin. So in a way I would say that he's faking it, but that's not accurate, because what happens is, it's not just a fake, that he's he's making believe that everything is pure and he has to keep it all on that level, even his mundane food. It's not how it works, because it actually works that it actually gets the status. Chullin shenasu al taras hakodesh, mundane foods that are kept to a status of kodesh can actually take that status of tumah. It's not just a fake that he's playing as if, but it actually the tumah actually grabs onto it because it's kept to that level. However, Rabbi Yeshua doesn't hold of this 100%. He holds of this concept, but it doesn't work exactly perfectly. So we're saying we're dealing here with chulin that was kept to the level of kodesh.
What do you mean the level of kodesh? How do you make fun?
That means that normally chulin, you don't need to wash your hands. You don't need to. But he's imagining that my chulin is not regular chulin. It's a sacrifice. Now he could also do it with imagine that his chulin is truma. In the Gemara, for some reason, as we're going to say, yeah, this would be a chaver. But okay, and now we're dealing with the food items here, and the animal of this person that we just shechted, he considers his animals kodesh. So he has to, and it doesn't fit with Rabbi Yeshua.
Could you say that this is like we don't have part of the month, but we still go to the mikveh?
So it's like the Gemara says, the Gemara in Nida talks about people that after the destruction of the temple, they still kept the laws of purity as if the temple was around. They kept it. It says Chavraya Midchan Begalol, that there was this group of people that were still following that. So here, it's not just that there's no Beis HaMikdash. There is a Beis HaMikdash. That's not our issue, but they're keeping it even for things that it's not relevant for, because they're always eating kodesh. They want to keep everything to that standard. Rashi on Bahayim Shemaya in Chumash, Rashi says, he brings a pasuk, Hitzivalach Tziyunim, that you should keep all the mitzvahs, even tefillin and mezuzah, outside the land of Israel, because when you go back, you should be familiar with it. You should be. But now all the mitzvahs are just signs or symbols. So everyone asks, what are you talking about? The mitzvahs aren't real? One of the commentaries says that it's actually misread. Originally it was a Rashi Tevis, that you should keep Taf Vav Mem, Trumas and Maisras. Because now we don't have Trumas and Maisras. And when we go back, we will. But the commentaries read it as tefillin and mezuzah. So that's a very interesting shot.
According to Rashi, Trumas and Maisras in Chutz
No, we don't have Trumas and Maisras in Chutz La'aretz. Very close to the land of Israel, they had some gzeiros. But as you go away from it,
we hold Ma'aser from a Rabbi.
We hold. There's three opinions when it comes to Meiser of money, Meiser Ksafim. Either it's based on the biblical law, it's rabbinic, or it's only a custom. Majority opinions hold that it's a custom, but it's a strong custom. It's
could have read this Torah mitzvah, so it would be really.
Okay. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Rabbi Eliezer, we're going to have a conversation here between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua.
Yeah.
Rabbi Eliezer Eimer, ha'oichel rishon. If someone that eats food that's impure as a first level impurity, his body becomes the level of the first level. Oh, thank you. So, Shani, let's say he eats the level of the second level of impurity, his body becomes a Shani. In other words, the person that eats it, his body takes on that level of, usually food doesn't make a person tummy. A person becomes tummy from the actual tumah, and the person makes food tummy. Food doesn't make a person tummy, but here we're saying the person ate a large amount of food, half a pras. It's not just like regular tumah, which is usually a kabeya. He ate 2 eggs, half a pras. Pras means a half. A half a pras means a quarter. So he ate 2 eggs instead of 1 egg. So he ate a certain amount of impure foods. There's a concern that while he's eating some holy foods, truma or something, he may have those foods in his mouth. So we give him that status of that food. Maybe he didn't clean his teeth or something, and and maybe he may take a drink. It can't be the cleanest teeth because that's not enough food. It needs to be an egg size to impart food. But maybe he's going to have some other food in his mouth while he has the impure food. So we give him that status. Shlishi. Let's say he eats food that's shlishi. The only way it could be shlishi is if he ate truma, because chullin doesn't become a shlishi. So he also becomes a shlishi. Rabbi Shua says, Ha'eichel rishon v'sheni is a sheni. Eily, I would have worn my other jacket. So, if someone eats a eichel rishon here, if someone eats a eichel rishon, that means it's impure on the first level, or sheni, it's a sheni. The sheni we get, because that's exactly Rabbi Lezer's opinion. If you eat a sheni, you become a sheni. Right? That's what Rabbi Lezer holds. Here Rabbi Shua says, a rishon becomes a sheni. If he eats food that's a rishon l'tumah, a first level tumah, he becomes a sheni. If he eats a second level of tumah, he also becomes a sheni. It's a little inconsistent, which is going to be very difficult, but the Gemara is going to go through it. Then the Gemara says, shlishi, let's say he eats a shlishi. This is totally inconsistent. Then he becomes a sheni l'kaidesh, vein sheni l'chuma. He becomes a shlishi if he eats the food that's a shlishi. If he would become a shlishi and he would eat truma is no problem, because truma only reaches shlishi. It doesn't go to a revi. Kodesh does. So we would say that maybe he becomes a shlishi for kodesh, because he ate food that's a shlishi. We'll consider him a shlishi. He can't eat truma, but we don't do that. We consider him a sheni. We go back a level. And he's not a sheni for truma. Yeah, it's very hard. The inconsistency with Rabbi Shua is so complicated. It's so that it goes back. First, by a rishon, it became a sheni. By a sheni, it stayed the same. By a shlishi, it goes back to a sheni.
Well,
and that's only for...
He's consistent. Everything's a sheni.
You're right.
You see, only a kohen.
Very good. No, but it's also an accountant.
Only a kohen. A kohen. A kohen
He's
and
too
an
much high. You just got to
accountant,
accept it.
double whammy.
Very good.
Right?
Very
I mean,
good.
it's
Okay. And we say, what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with Bechulin Shanasu Al Taras Truma. We're dealing with Chulin that was kept to the purity status of Truma. So mundane food that was kept to that status. Now that's very interesting to us. That's the point that the Gemara is going to discuss. We say Al Taras Truma in, Al Taras Kodesh Lai. Why do you use that example? Al Taras Truma. That's where these laws will apply. Kasavar, it's because he holds Chulin Shanasu Al Taras Kodesh Les Bushlishi. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to say that our Mishnah says that
What's the
if
chiddush?
the meat gets wet with the blood, then you can't eat it with hands that are a sheni. So we're saying we're talking about meat that's kept to the level of Taras Kodesh. That it's as if it's a sacrifice. But it's not really a sacrifice, it's regular chulin, but it's kept to that level. We said it's not going to fit with Rabbi Yeshua. Because Rabbi Yeshua says that things that are kept to the level of truma, then it could become a shlishi. We consider it as a sheni. In other words, mundane food that's kept to the level of truma, we take it back to a sheni. But for kodesh, not for truma, for kodesh. But if it's food that's kept to the level of kodesh, we don't, which is odd. So let me explain. Truma would be referring to grains. And I'm going to keep my grains all to the level of truma, even though only 2% is truma. Truma is 2 out of 100, or 1 out of 50. Trei mimeh, 2 out of 100. So I'm keeping all my grains to the level of truma. That's chulin shenasu al taras truma. Chulin shenasu al taras kodesh would be that I'm keeping all my food, all my meat, to the level of sacrifices. That's more strict because sacrifices are even more diluted. Tumah can reach sacrifices. Even a 4th level could go to the sacrifice. For some reason, Rabbi Yeshua holds that we only say this chulin shenasu al taras truma is actually a real thing by chulin shenasu al taras truma, but not chulin shenasu al taras kodesh. It only works for the lower level when we fake it for truma, but not when we fake it for kodesh. For some reason, the kodesh doesn't absorb the not real kodesh doesn't absorb the tumah.
It says here that the tumor that we're talking about is not tumor from contact; it's a tumor from eating.
Right. Because we're talking about the person that ate it.
You said about kodesh chibasam.
Yeah, that machshartim, chibasam
So
machshartim.
maybe that's an extra level. That's why in kodesh it is, and
The way I understood it was that you can always make believe whatever you want, but we're not only dealing with the make believe. We're dealing with, because you're making believe that it's altaras kodesh, it actually gets those levels of tumah. Because you're keeping it to that, it gets that. But altaras kodesh, it's a little bit more strange because it's not as common for people to do that. There's not as many people doing that, and it wouldn't be as often. So altaras truma, we consider that a real thing, but altaras kodesh we don't. That's Rabbi Shua's opinion. Okay, so therefore, according to this, we have.
altaras truma is only for a kohen.
Well, it could be more than just for a kohen, because a kohen would need that, but it could be that even someone that wants to take truma to give it to the kohen, he has to keep all his grain pure because he has to give the truma. So, what we've just established here is that our Mishnah, which is talking about someone that slaughters an animal, no blood came out, so he doesn't need to be concerned about touching it with his hands that are a sheni latuma. It's not a problem that its chulin doesn't reach a shlishi, because here we're dealing with chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh, which according to Rabbi Eliezer would make a shlishi for kodesh. Chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh. Yeah. The Gemara asks, "V'lukma b'chulin shenasu al taras truma v'Rabbi Yeshua." Why do you have to say this? That it's chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh, and Rabbi Yeshua doesn't hold of it. Say it's chulin shenasu al taras truma, and Rabbi Yeshua does hold of it. The Gemara says, "Leis al kadaitach." You can't say this. Tiktani basar, because we're dealing with meat. There is no truma by meat.
I mean, the case of the Mishnah you're talking about.
Right. Well, so why don't we say that our Mishnah is talking about meat that's kept to the level of truma, and then Rabbi Yeshua would agree with that it could become a shlishi. We said we can't say that because the Mishnah is meat. The ibit truma, if it's truma, basar miyika, is there such a thing as truma meat? Truma is grain and wine and oil. Elamai, it must be bekachim. Now we're dealing with kachim. Now we're left with another problem. The Mishnah, one of the terms of the Mishnah is chaya, is a wild animal. Chaya bekachim miyika. Is there such a thing as a sacrifice that's brought from a deer or a buffalo or something? There's no such thing, right? So
Jewish, not Jewish.
Not Jewish sacrifice. So how can you say it's chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh? We don't have sacrifices that are brought from wild animals. The Gemara says no. Basar b'basar michlaf. Someone could keep it to the level of chulin shenasu al taras, to the level of sacrifices, even though there is no sacrifice that's brought from deer or whatever, because meats are interchangeable. He may confuse them, so he's keeping all his meat to that level. But basar b'peri le'michlaf, but he's not going to keep his meat to the level of his grains, because that doesn't get confused. You won't confuse meat and grains.
Makes sense.
So this chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh would be applicable, but it won't be in our Mishnah. But it won't be applicable chulin shenasu al taras truma, because our Mishnah is talking about meat. Amar Ula, we're not done over here.
Wait, isn't the meat here? He said that
Right.
was nishchat without bleeding.
Yeah,
So why would this guy be doing shchita on non-kosher meat?
no.
No, it's kosher. It's an animal.
What we're talking about is
Right.
we have a concern that the meat could become impure by touching it with his hands without washing his hands. His hands are always a second degree tumah. problem is that what type of meat is it? Is it mundane meat or is it sacrificial meat? If it's mundane, it's kosher meat. It's kosher meat, but so we said that if it's mundane meat, then it doesn't get impure. If it's sacrificial meat, it can't be because the Mishnah would, it could be susceptible anyway. All types of problems. It can't be sacrificial. So what we said is it's mundane meat that's kept to the purity level of sacrificial meat. And Rabbi Shua doesn't hold of this, but Rabbi Eliezer does hold that it could receive, it's susceptible to a third degree tumah. Amar Ula. Ula says, Chavraya Amrin B'chol Shanasa Al Taras HaKodesh, like Rabbi Shua. The fellows in the yeshiva say that it's referring to Chullin Daf Al Taras HaKodesh, that it's mundane food that's kept to the level of sacrificial meat. And it doesn't fit with Rabbi Yeshua. But I say it is Rabbi Yeshua. And what Rabbi Yeshua is doing is he's saying not only does this apply to mundane food that's kept to the level of truma, but even mundane food that's kept to the level of sacrificial meat is also have this halachas that it will become a secondary level of tumah, which could become a third level of tumah as well. The Gemara says, it elaborates. You see, the way we were reading it before, the Mishnah, the Machlekes, Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Yeshua said that it's talking about mundane food that's kept to the level of truma. So we were medayak. We deduced from that to the level of truma. You would say these halachas, but to kodesh you don't say this. Comes along Ula and says, no, don't be medayak like that. Say the other way. Say that of course it's if it's kept to the level of sacrificial meats, it would get these halachas. Even if it's kept to the level of truma, it still gets the halachas. So it's not excluding. It's telling me a bigger chiddush, and it's including both. It goes without saying that mundane food that's kept to the level of sacrificial meats, which is more strict, that it will become a third level of impurity, which means if he touches it with his hands that are secondary, it'll make it impure, even though it's not a sacrificial meat itself. It's just kept to the level of sacrificial meats. But even if it's mundane food that's kept to the level of truma, also that ispahu shlishi would also have a third level. Okay, so he could say Ula could fit our Mishnah that it's Rabbi Yeshua as well. Man chavraya, who's the friend that he was talking about? The fellow in the yeshiva that learns it different. He says it's Rabbi Bar Bar Chana. The Amar Rabbi Bar Bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yechanan. It's Rabbi Bar Bar Chana because Rabbi Bar Bar Chana says in the name of his teacher Rabbi Yechanan, Maya Haji Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yeshua Ladadi. What did Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua say to each other? Now, whenever we have the conversations, Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua, it's always like beating around the bush, like always like secondary. Several times you have this. Like the exact point they know already. They're bringing like these other issues. He says, Amalei Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Lezer says to Rabbi Yeshua, I should point out that Rabbi Eliezer was contested a ruling that Rabbi Yeshua was a proponent of, and because the whole yeshiva was on Rabbi Yeshua's side, Rabbi Eliezer later gets put in cherem, and Rabbi Akiva goes to tell him. He wears the dresses in black and he doesn't come close. He says, your friends have separated themselves from you. He knows he's been excommunicated. At the end, apparently he was accepted back, because on his deathbed, there's this conversations, although it may not be 100% true, because it doesn't say on his deathbed. It says when he was sick, his friends came to visit, and that could be he was sick at an earlier time before the excommunication. But he was a brother-in-law of Rabbi Gamliel, because his wife was Ein Mashalom, was Rabbi Gamliel's sister, and because Rabbi Gamliel was part of this, so when Rabbi Eliezer said Tachnan, so Rabbi Gamliel passed away when he put his head down. So Rabbi Gamliel passed away. But his wife never let him say Tachnan. She would always interrupt him, but she was distracted one day. To put his head down.
Never let him do it.
Yeah. So
one time he did it, she starts screaming, "You already killed him! Get up!"
Wow. And then the news came that. Okay, so here we have this conversation. And this conversation is not actually in the Mishnah. It's recorded to us by Rabbi Yochanan being said over by his student, Rabbi Bar Bachana.
Why were the rabbis in those days, there's a lot of these stories with put in cherem, not accepted. I mean, it's kind of zero tolerance to a second opinion. Sometimes
I'll tell you.
There, you gotta.
This. I'll discuss it after. You get me carried away. Matzino, Eichel Chamar min ha'Eichel. We find Rabbi Eliezer tells to Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer held that if a person eats a certain level of impurity, he becomes that level of impurity. And Rabbi Yeshua said he always becomes a sheni. So Rabbi Eliezer says to Rabbi Yeshua, we find that eating, the person eating, is stricter than the food itself. The ilu nevela seiftar bachutz leimetame. If someone touches a kosher bird that wasn't shechted, that's dead, he doesn't become tamei. V'ilu eichla metame begadim beis habliya. But if someone swallows a piece of it, he eats it, then all his clothing become tamei. So we see that the eating makes a person more tamei than.
Why is it not tamei for touching it?
Oh, that's the rule. A nevela is only by an animal, but by nevela, a dead animal imparts tumah.
We said that you put a nevela in a tray for the nevela has tumah.
Right. But that's only by an animal. By a bird, a nevela seiftar, it does have tumah, but it doesn't give off the tumah with touching it. It only gives off the tumah when someone swallows a piece of it. Now, va'anu, and for us, heichlei nasa eichel k'meichel, or ka'eichel. Why don't we make the person at least like the level of the food? Now, he's directly discussing if someone eats a first level of impurity. Rabbi Yeshua says he becomes a second level of impurity. Rabbi Eliezer says he becomes a first level of impurity. He says eating is worse than the food. Is worse than just touching the food itself. So therefore, he should become the level of the food itself. At least he should become the level. Eating is worse than the food itself, because the food itself, you touch it, you don't even become tamei. When you eat it, all of a sudden you become tamei. So over here, if he eats a first level of impurity, he should at least become a first level of impurity. Rabbi Yeshua says, Rabbi Yeshua, min nevela seiftar legamrin, the chiddush. You can't learn from nevela seiftar. That's an anomaly. That's a strange case. That's a chiddush. Nothing is comparable to that. Elamatzinu shehameichel chamar min ha'eichel. We find it exactly the opposite. That the food is more strict than the one who eats it. The ilameichel bekabeya. How does food become impure? Or give off impurity, according to everyone? It needs to be the size of an egg. So food that's impure won't make other food impure unless it's the size of an egg. Can it become impure if it's less than the size of an egg? It's Machlekes Rashi and the Rambam. But everyone holds that it can't give off an impurity for sure if it's not the